The observation deck of the Galactic Training Facility hummed with the quiet confidence of 1,000 civilizations that had mastered the stars long before humanity ever looked up. Commander Vexthera, a Krellian with 4 articulated limbs and centuries of zero-gravity instruction experience, stood before the transparent aluminum viewing port, mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among her species. "Another human trainee," she said to her assistant, a young Forian named Kess who hovered nearby using his species' natural magnetic field manipulation. "They never learn, gravity-bound creatures thinking they can compete in the void." Below them, in the massive spherical training chamber, the newest batch of multi-species recruits floated in varying states of grace. The Krellians moved with fluid precision, their multiple limbs allowing them to push off surfaces with calculated efficiency. The Forians simply adjusted their electromagnetic signatures, gliding like thoughts through space. Even the crystalline Shardborn, with their rigid managed to navigate by reflecting precisely calibrated light pulses. And then there was specialist Maya Chen, the human. She tumbled end over end near the chamber's equator, limbs flailing, clearly disoriented. Vexthera's mandibles clicked again. "See, same as always. Humans are built for gravity wells. Take that away, and they're helpless. Their inner ear systems become confused. Their proprioception fails them. It's almost cruel to accept them into the program." Kess, who was younger and more diplomatic, tilted his crystalline head. "Commander, the human space agencies have been operating in zero gravity for over 3 centuries now. Surely with rails, with thrusters, with compensators and aids," Vexthera interrupted. "But raw ability, natural adaptation, they're always the last to master it, if they ever do." She pulled up Maya's file on her datapad. "This one has excellent marks in theoretical astrophysics and engineering, but theory means nothing out here. In 3 rotations, she'll wash out like the others." The training exercise was simple in concept, brutal in execution. Navigate from one side of the 50-meter sphere to the other, execute a controlled flip, and land on the designated platform or without touching any of the guidance rails that lined the chamber's interior. It was the final test before recruits could be certified for deep space operations. Maya had finally stopped tumbling, floating motionless near the chamber's center. From this distance, Vexthera couldn't see her expression, but she could imagine it: the frustration, the vertigo, the crushing realization that some species were simply made for this environment and others weren't. "Watch," Vexthera said, zooming in the view. She reached for the rail now. They always do. But Maya didn't reach for the rail. Instead, she did something peculiar. She closed her eyes. For 30 seconds, she simply floated there, arms at her sides, breathing deeply. The other recruits had already completed their runs, the Krellians in elegant arcs, the Forians in straight lines, the Shardborn in geometric perfection. Only Maya remained, suspended in the void. Her eyes opened. What happened next would be discussed in training academies across 12 sectors for years to come. Maya didn't push off from anything because there was nothing to push off from. Instead, she tucked her chin to her chest and drew her knees up in a tight ball. The movement was so small, so precise, that it seemed impossible it could generate momentum. But it did. She began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. Vexthera's mandibles stopped clicking, using nothing but the conservation of angular momentum. Maya spun herself into a controlled rotation. Then, at the exact moment her orientation aligned with her target, she extended her limbs in a specific pattern, right arm and left leg first, creating an asymmetric push against the air resistance in the chamber. It was minuscule, barely measurable, but in zero gravity, it was enough. She began to move. "Impossible," Vexthera whispered. "The air resistance in this chamber is negligible." It shouldn't, but Maya was accelerating, using techniques Vexthera had never seen. She would tuck and spin, building rotational energy, then extend specific limbs at precise moments, each movement converting her spin into directional thrust. She wasn't fighting the zero-gravity environment. She was dancing with it. Halfway across the chamber, Maya executed a maneuver that made Kess gasp. She spread her limbs wide, dramatically increasing her air resistance to slow her rotation, then compressed again, spinning faster. The effect was like watching a figure skater on ice, but there was no ice, no surface, nothing but void and the faintest whisper of atmosphere as she approached the landing platform. Maya tucked into another tight spin, building angular momentum. Then, 3 meters from the target, she extended her body into a perfect arc, her trajectory calculated not through instruments but through pure kinesthetic awareness. She rotated exactly 1.5 times, her feet coming round to meet the platform at the precise moment of contact. She landed without a sound, without touching a single rail. Her knees bent slightly to absorb the minimal impact. The chamber was silent. Vexthera's limbs hung limply at her sides. How, ... Maya looked up at the observation deck, though she couldn't possibly see through the one-way view. She smiled and gave a small salute. Kes pulled up data on his screen, his voice filled with wonder. Commander, I'm reading the micro-movements she used. She calculated air resistance, angular momentum conservation, even the magnetic field fluctuations from our observation equipment. She turned her entire body into a precision instrument. Vexthera was already accessing the human databases, searching for context. What she found made her mandibles click, but this time not with laughter, with respect. Humans had been playing in three-dimensional space for millennia, not in the void, but in water, diving, swimming. Their bodies understood rotation and momentum in ways that species who evolved with magnetic fields or multiple, stabilizing limbs never needed to develop. And more recently, they had invented activities called parkour and training their kinesthetic awareness to navigate complex three-dimensional environments. When humans looked at Zero, they didn't see an alien environment to be conquered with technology. They saw a playground they'd been preparing for all along. Request her file, Vexthera said quietly. Full profile. I want to know everything about Specialist Chen. Yes, Commander. Kes paused. Should I also, perhaps, revise our training protocols? Vexthera watched as Maya helped another recruiter struggling Krellian, ironically understand the principles of momentum transfer, the human's adaptability, her willingness to approach problems from angles that seemed impossible, her species' strange gift for turning limitations into advantages. Yes, Vexthera said finally. Revise them all. And Kes, Commander, never assume a species' limitations define their potential. The humans have taught us that much. In the chamber below, Maya Chen floated free, spinning gracefully between the rails she didn't need, already helping others find their way through the void. Above her, an instructor who had laughed was now learning, and in the vast darkness beyond the station, the stars waited for those bold enough to dance among them.